All right, I told you we're going to look at the the rest of Hezekiah's reign, and that includes a very, very significant find, quite a few years ago now actually, but a very, very significant find that relates to something Hezekiah did. At least he's given that name, or the archaeological site is given his name, Hezekiah's Tunnel. Even if that's not exactly the best term for it. Go in your Bibles to 2 Chronicles chapter 32. 2 Chronicles chapter 32. We looked yesterday, the last class period, at Hezekiah's revival. And he did some things that were the first things done in many, many years. He celebrated the Passover again in chapter 30. And he invited a lot of people to this celebration. What was unusual about that celebration? What was unusual about that invitation? Jacob?
He extended it to Israel?
Yes, it was extended to everybody from Dan to Beersheba. Okay, so everyone was invited, and in order to do that, you have to send posts, messengers. I don't know how they traveled back then, rode on the back of a lion or something. And they traveled up to the north, through the northern kingdom, city to city. You're not going to be well received among lots of people. And so they spread the word that way. He also reorganized the priests and set them to their daily sacrifices. He required the people to tithe. Wouldn't it be nice, the pastors could do that today. But anyway, so... yeah, a great spiritual revival takes place first in chapters 30, 29, 30, and 31. Then we get to chapter 32, which is where we're going to pick up today. We're going to see Hezekiah's great victory, and you have that. 2 Kings 18, 5 through 8. We see in that passage that Hezekiah refused to pay tribute to Sennacherib. Sennacherib is not the king yet. I don't believe. I'm trying to remember my Assyrian history, but I don't believe he's the king yet. I believe he's the general who they were paying the tribute, to whom they were paying the tribute. There we go. My bad English. Hezekiah realized that Sennacherib, after he refused to pay the tribute, Sennacherib was going to attack Jerusalem. And so Hezekiah changes his mind and says, wait a second, please forgive me. We will pay the tribute. And in order to do that, they have to strip the temple of some of the silver and gold. Okay, that takes place on several different occasions. The northern kingdom didn't have this kind of inherent wealth. Okay, the southern kingdom did. And so they're able to pay off on several different occasions different attackers, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians before this time. All right, so there's several examples of that. All right, so Hezekiah starts to make some reinforcements around Jerusalem. We see there in chapter 32, I'm in the wrong section. There we go. Verse number 2, when Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib was come and that he was purposed to fight against Jerusalem, he took counsel with his princes and his mighty men to stop the waters of the fountains which were without the city, and they did help him. Okay, and there was gathered much people together who stopped all the fountains and the brook that ran through the midst of the land, saying, why should the king of Assyria come and find much water? Also he strengthened himself and built up all the wall that was broken and raised it up to the towers, and another wall without, and repaired Millo in the city of David, and made darts and shields in abundance. And he set captains of war over the people and gathered them together to him in the street of the gate of the city, and spake comfortably to them, saying, be strong and courageous, be not afraid nor dismayed for the king of Assyria, nor for all the multitude that is with him, for there be more with us than with him. With him is an arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us. All right, now what's he doing? What's he doing? Here in this passage, this is we see him building up around the city of David. This map here will kind of give you an idea. The Gijn Springs are, or at that time it's believed, were outside the city walls. And by the way, the Gijn Springs to this day are down at the bottom of this higher hill, this lower. Anyway, it's quite a distance. I forget. We stood at the top of what would have been David's palace. And if you go down to the Gijn Springs, it's got to be at least 100 feet of altitude. It's pretty far. I forget the exact numbers. But the Gijn Springs were outside the city, the wall. So what do you have to do? You have to extend. Well, there's several options. I've seen this at Megiddo. They disguised the spring that was outside the city walls. And there's a lot of evidence for that. So they covered it up so that nobody could see it. They tried to hide it from their enemy. Because once the enemy finds it, if they can pollute the water, there's the end of your city. It's a matter of time. So what do you have to do? First of all, you can disguise it. The other option would be to build extend the wall and the towers around it. Okay, which seems to be the indication of what Hezekiah did. So he strengthened and fortified the springs. He also built up Millo, the area to the north of the city. Why would he have to build that up? Yes?
Is that where the water would go to?
No.
That one has the least natural defenses.
Absolutely. Okay, if you look here, there's hill, there's a big valley down on the side and a steep hill going up here. All of this is generally well protected. Now this is the best right here, the Kidron Valley. The Central Valley was much deeper at that time. It's not nearly as deep anymore, hardly anything in fact. But this Central Valley was the other side. The only side that wasn't very well naturally protected was this northern side. So you have to build extra big walls and extra large towers and so on like that. And that's what he does, is he strengthens this northern part of the city. And it wouldn't be just here. It'd be all the way up in this side here. All the way to Herod. They always understood that the weak side of Jerusalem was this northwest side. Okay? The Tower of David. Okay? The Tower of David is built over here on this side of the old Temple Mount. Huge tower. Why? Because this is the weak side of Jerusalem. Okay, so he's building that up. So he's protecting his springs. He's also doing this. Now he wants to bring the spring inside of the city walls. Go to, all right, chapter 20. There we go. 2 Kings chapter 20. And the rest of the acts of Hezekiah and all his might, and how he made a pool and a conduit and brought water into the city. Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? Is it in 2 Chronicles? A brief mention of it as well. Yes, verse 30 of chapter 32. This same Hezekiah also stopped the upper water course of Gihon and brought it straight down to the west side of the city of David. All right. So there was a lot of debate over whether Hezekiah actually did this. Now, in the city of Jerusalem to this day, in the land of Israel to this day, there's a lot of argument over who was there first. Okay, we know that. The Palestinians, who are, many of them are outsiders living in the land of Israel. They're not Jewish. They claim that they were there first. The Muslims claim that they were there first. And of course the Jews, and we believe the Bible, so we believe the Jews were there. Before them it was the Canaanites and the Perizzites and all those people, you know. So if we can find some kind of evidence, some writing, something that references the city of David, something that references a king, something that says, you know, connecting an old document that people believe, connecting the land of Judah and the city of Jerusalem to these Jewish kings? Well, I have one of those documents right here. Okay, this is an old document. It's a trusted source, obviously. But a lot of people don't accept that. And again, so it's nice to have some kind of document. Well, if that's true, then that tunnel should still, at least parts of it, if he actually built a tunnel across the bottom of the city of David from the Gijn Springs all the way down to a pool down on this side, if that actually happened, there would be remnants of that tunnel still around. So, there were many archaeologists looking for that tunnel. The same archaeologists, it wouldn't be on this map, this is the city of David, but the same archaeologists who discovered some of the arches and the works of Herod up around the Temple Mount also did a lot of work trying to figure out where this tunnel is. We can find the Gijn Springs, they said, but where are these tunnels at? And so let me just show you several things here, several pictures. This is an example here right by the Gijn Springs. They've found those springs. They're still there. There's still water coming out of them, and a lot of it. They don't feed or give water to the whole city of Jerusalem anymore like they used to. But here's an entryway, the main entryway, going down into the Gijn Spring. And then it opens up. I don't know if I have these in order. I think I do. It opens up rather large. You can see there's the steps coming down. And then this big area opens up. And the spring is there. Now, of course, this is thousands of years old. And there have been lots and lots of different tunnels dug into this, connecting this to different sections of Jerusalem. So anyway, some of these tunnels have names that archaeologists have named them. What's his name? Warren's Shaft. Okay, that's a tunnel. A part of that, some of them connect, some of them don't. Some of them connect 50 feet away from the spring. There's it's a network of tunnels. So when you go down there, if you ever get over there, you can go down to the Gijn Springs, and you're underneath other buildings, and you're looking around at what was at one time the top level, and you're looking around trying to figure out, and they've got some side of a hill dug out, and there you see a tunnel heading out. Who knows where it goes? But it's a network of tunnels down there. Okay, so this is a picture of the Gijn Springs. One of these tunnels is believed to be Warren's Shaft. A guy named Charles Warren, an archaeologist, 1871, discovered this tunnel, and he had the idea that this is a very good chance that this is the shaft that Hezekiah's tunnel extended from. We only read about in a couple places in the Bible. Oh yeah, by the way, Hezekiah built a tunnel. He stopped the Gijn Springs at the upper water course and brought it down and lined it down to the other side of the city of Jerusalem. By the way, pools. We think of pools as entertainment for their entertainment value. Okay, their pools. Maybe in the days of Christ were some entertainment, but I don't think most of their pools were a water supply. Okay? It's a water supply. The water was brought down from the Gijn Springs down to a pool, and then the pool would fill up, and then there was a drain on the other side, so as there's continual water flow coming into the pool, it goes out the other side as it's filled up. So occasionally, of course, this pool was not for swimming. Okay? We think of a pool for swimming. These pools were for drinking water. And, anyway, other things as well. Get your water and go bathe. But you didn't bathe in the pool. Okay? The guy in John chapter 8, I think it was, is, every time I go to step into the pool at the stirring of the waters, another man cometh down before me. Okay? They weren't all jumping in the pool swimming all the time. There was one time a year where the water was stirred and one person would try to get in there first. Well, they all try to get in there first, but one person would get healed. At least that was is that superstition on that thing? I've heard that before. So anyway, let me read to you a little bit about that. The tunnel was first discovered in 1838 by Edward Robinson. Robinson's Arch. Okay? Despite the tunnel being examined extensively during the 19th century, Charles Wilson's Arch, another archaeologist discovered up around the Temple Mount, Charles Warren, they all found parts of this tunnel. They all discovered this. Actually, it wouldn't be parts of this. The same tunnel. But it was first discovered by Robinson. And he didn't know exactly what he had found. Didn't know which tunnel it was. Several of these actually were able to go through a good section of the tunnel. Let's see here, 1800, over a quarter mile of tunnel that they were able to go through. Okay, when I went through the tunnel, I believe it was over a half mile long. And it's a lot of really interesting tight fits. And if you're claustrophobic, you're very nervous. Okay, Mr. Peyton did not go through the tunnel. He went around to the other end and waited for them at the other end. There are times where the tunnel is literally where I had to bend over. I had a hat on. I'll never forget. I had a hat on, and you know that little knob on top of the hat? Man, I came out of Hezekiah's tunnel with a bloody head. I'm not kidding. It hit my head like 4 or 5 times. And I'm looking down with my flashlight walking along, and bang! That knob really did me in. Boy, I hated that thing. But anyway, there's times where it's this tall. There's times where it's about 13, 14 feet tall. But it followed the bedrock. Now, if you can just imagine the engineering to, if you're on this hill, okay, and here's the Gijn Springs, and that water has to come all the way underneath and a gradual decline the entire way. And we know from what was found in the middle, we know that they dug from both sides. So imagine the engineering to know that you're lower here, connecting to this, and to meet. And by the way, they didn't go in a straight line. The tunnel, if you follow and look it up sometime, I should have brought a diagram, but the tunnel wiggles around. It follows the bedrock. Okay, it was dug out of solid rock the entire way. Yes?
How did what puzzles me is, like, they didn't have a transit, or how in the world did they get their grade?
I don't know. They had ways of measuring the earth. There's no question. I don't know that. That's a great question. People in ancient times weren't as dumb as we think they were, though, by the way. They were very smart. And this is not the only example of that. So anyway, several of these guys went through the tunnel. This section didn't find anything. They came out the other side, and there's all these churches built up around it, churches and mosques and who knows what all. And so for years, I remember as a kid looking at pictures, they said, that's Siloam, the pool of Siloam. And all you see is this big walls and a little bitty pool at the bottom. And I'd walk through that, about 8 feet wide, 30 feet long or so. And it kind of notches off a little bit. And they said that was the pool, the edge of the pool of Siloam. And everything's built up 20 feet above it, now. So anyway, and it's part of the tunnel. So we came out of that. Anyway, that's called the Pool of Siloam for many years. Well, you continue that line where the water came out. If you continue, go about 100 feet on past that now. We came out the steps of the old Pool of Siloam down to the other side. And now it's been excavated. A huge pool. And some of you have seen pictures of that, I know. And looked at, I didn't bring pictures of that. That's not my point. But a huge pool that this drained into and through out the other side. Well, anyway, so my point is there something in that tunnel that identifies it? Is there's something that identifies it as the tunnel that Hezekiah made. And these archaeologists walked through. They, of course, can you imagine being one of the first in a couple thousand years to go through a tunnel? And so, anyway, before I tell you the discovery, this is a picture. You can always see which is the bottom. If you're looking at a picture, you're like, oh my goodness, which way is this? Look at the water. The water is always in the bottom, I guarantee it. Okay? So there's a picture. I'll just send these around rather quickly. Here's a picture of a real tall roof. And most of the time, as I'm walking through it, it's basically elbow to elbow. And there were people that were walking through it this way for a half a mile. And you're in water usually about mid-calf. So, by the way, every young Israeli person, boys and girls, for 2 years have to serve in their military. And part of their training is to go to these sites and see their history. So they go to Masada, imagine that. Let's do a field trip today. Let's go to, Herod's Caesarea Maritima. Let's go see the amphitheater and the hippodrome at Caesarea. Oh, wouldn't that be fun? One of the things they do also is they take them, every recruit, every soldier, every young person goes through Hezekiah's tunnel. So right in front of us, going in line, we had to stand at the top of the stairs and wait to go down into the tunnel for about 15 minutes, waiting for this whole group of soldiers. They all took their combat boots off, tied them together, strapped them about their neck, put their machine guns and Uzis on their back, and they go through the tunnel, and they're all, as they go down the water, they do the same thing we did. They were like, oh, that's cold. It's real cold water, ice cold water. You get used to it after a while. But it's very, very tight. Okay, I just had several pictures that I got for you. All right, now here's confusing. So here's the water. Okay, now this gives you a little bit of an idea of the network of tunnels. Okay, the water's running this way, so this is a tunnel. That is a hole connecting to another big room over there. So anyway, if you got lost down there, didn't know where you're going. Here again, there's several spots along the tunnel where there's a little side offshoot, a tunnel dug for 5-10 feet, and then that's it. And so there's a lot of conjecture of what that was. Probably it was the diggers. They started the wrong direction, and then they said, whoa, wait a second. Somebody came, got word to them, and said, you're going there. I don't know what they did, without their modern tools that they would have had. So take a look at those. Here's one of those dead ends. Okay, he's coming along this way, heading on this direction, and you can stop, see the little side chute. Okay, now let's answer the question then. So is there anything that can identify? By the way, that they haven't found, is there one thing, maybe one thing in the land of Israel that they found with the name of David on it? Is there one? I think there's one. Didn't we talk about that?
I saw it at the Dead Sea Scrolls Museum, and it's an Egyptian pot that says something about David.
Yes.
The House of David.
The House of David, yes. Okay. So these archaeologists went through the tunnel. They didn't see one of the most prized possessions in the tunnel. They walked past it. In 1880, a youth, Jacob Eliyahu, wading through the tunnel from the Siloam pool end, he discovered an inscription cut in the rock on the eastern side about 19 feet into the tunnel. He didn't go in from the very end. Back then, they didn't know where the end was. But Anyway, so he finds this inscription. It's basically at the halfway point. The inscription was cut from the wall of the tunnel in 1891 and broken into fragments, recovered through the efforts of the British consul and placed in the Istanbul Archaeology Museum. If you go to Istanbul, you can see the actual inscription that's been put back together. Let's see here. As the inscription was not able to be read at first due to a bunch of deposits that were on it, a professor was the first to make a tentative reading, and later the text was cleaned with an acid solution, making the reading more legible. The inscription contains 6 lines, of which the first is damaged. This is a copy of the inscription inside the tunnel at the exact spot where the other one was found. The original, of course, is gone in a museum. This is a copy of that, and it says above that, you'll see this, you are standing at the place where the Shiloh inscription, written approximately 2,700 years ago during the reign of Hezekiah, was discovered. And of course, it's in Hebrew. It's an old Hebrew. And so here's where you can see that some of it was damaged and cracked up and so on. But this is exactly what we have now in that museum in Istanbul. Okay? So you can look at that. I'll read to you what that inscription says. Okay? It says, it's something before, but it says, the tunnel, ... There's another space in there because of the cracked part. We don't know what it says. And this is the story of the tunnel while, and then there's an unfinished sentence. The axes were against each other, and while 3 cubits were left to cut, ... The voice of a man, ... So these are pieces of sentences. So they're hacking away, they're pounding away on the rock, and they hear something. They hear the voice of a man calling to his counterpart, for there was something in the rock on the right. And on the day of the tunnel being finished, the stonecutters struck each man towards his counterpart, axe against axe, and flowed water from the source to the pool for 1,200 cubits and 100, whatever that means. And 100 cubits was the height over the head of the stonecutters. Okay, so what happened is they're digging from both sides, and they finally, right before they met, they hear the pounding of the hammers, they hear the voice of the people, and suddenly the water at the bottom, of course, busts through and starts flowing through. Okay, I forgot to mention this. Of course, at the Gijn Springs, you don't connect the water supply, all of it, until you know it's going through, because the guys in the tunnel are going to get flooded out. Right? So that makes sense. Okay. Oh, that last phrase where it says the height over flowed water from the source to the pool for 1,200 cubits. That's 1,800 feet, so over a quarter mile. And 100 cubits was the height over the head of the stonecutters. Joel, somehow they knew that they were 100 cubits below the ground at the point that they met. So maybe they had a GPS. And they had it perfectly mapped out. A depth finder.
Yeah.
Sonar. Yes.
They had their little laser. Beep, beep, beep.
Right. Okay, so, and all the Bible says, oh yeah, by the way, Hezekiah dug a tunnel. And he got ready. So what he did is he got water from outside the city and plentiful inside the city and protected it. That's the important thing. All right. Any questions on that? By the way, how long did that take? That's a great question. How long did Hezekiah have? We don't know. Was Sennacherib coming already? Was he 20 miles away? Of course not. They wouldn't have had time to dig it. It took several years by any measurement. I've read different critics. They would say 4 to 5 years. Somebody would say, someone else, an engineer would say 2 or 3 years to plan it and to dig it, and have a lot of helpers passing buckets of stones back out the tunnel. It would have taken a couple years minimum. So they didn't start this when they found out that Sennacherib was on his way. They probably started it when they said, there's no other, he's coming for us next. There's no other, we got to get ready in case. All right, so Sennacherib comes to Jerusalem. Let's go on there to the scorn. You see that in Hezekiah's great victory. The situation, the scorn. 2 Chronicles, back to there. Chapter 32. Whoops, I went the wrong way. 2 Chronicles 32, verse number 9. After this did Sennacherib, king of Assyria, send his servants to Jerusalem, but he himself laid siege against Lachish and all his power with him, unto Hezekiah, king of Judah, and all Judah that were in Jerusalem, saying, what are you trusting in the Lord for? That's what he's saying. Doth not Hezekiah persuade you to give over yourselves to die by famine and thirst? Doesn't Hezekiah, he's trying to get you killed in a siege, because we are going to take your city. You might as well give it up. He says, the Lord our God shall deliver us. Hath not the same Hezekiah taken away his high places and his altars, and commanded Judah and Jerusalem, saying, ye shall worship before one altar and burn incense upon it? How can one God be enough? I mean, he took away all these other gods. Your other gods would have helped you. And all you have is one God left. Know ye not what I and my fathers have done unto all the people of other lands? Were the gods of those nations anyways able? I mean, they had lots of gods. Look what we did to them. All you got is one. Who is there among all the gods of those nations that my fathers utterly destroyed, that could deliver his people out of my hand, that your God, singular, should be able to deliver you out of mine hand? Now therefore, let not Hezekiah deceive you, nor persuade you on this matter, neither yet believe him, for no God of any nation or kingdom is able to deliver his people out of my hand, so on and so on. And his servants spake yet more against the Lord God and against his servant Hezekiah. He wrote also letters to rail on the Lord God of Israel, and to speak against him, saying, so on and so on. Then they cried with a loud voice in the Jews' speech unto the people of Jerusalem that were on the wall, to affright them and to trouble them. Oh boy, that'll make you pray. Verse 20, for this cause Hezekiah the king and the prophet Isaiah the son of Amoz prayed and cried to heaven. All right, the supplication, Hezekiah and the prophet Isaiah. In 2 Kings, we see them laying out that letter before the Lord. This is what David did, by the way. When David was facing Goliath, he didn't say, boy, I'm tougher than you think. He said, you can't talk about my God the way you're doing. My God's going to revenge his name. And that's exactly what Hezekiah does here. Lays the letter out, and the Lord reassures Hezekiah. Now here in this passage, all we see is, hey, there's an angel coming. Chapter 32, verse 21. And the Lord sent an angel which cut off all the mighty men of valor and the leaders and captains of the camp of the king of Assyria. So he returned with shame of face to his own land. And when he was coming to the house of his God, they that came from his own bowels, his own children, slew him there with the sword. Now, in 2 Kings, there's a little bit more detail on that. But in Assyrian history, there's more detail also on the death of Sennacherib. This death didn't happen 2 weeks later or a month later. It's probably about 20 years later that Sennacherib was killed by his own sons. But it happened. The Bible says it happened, and it did. All right, this angel. In 2 Kings, we read that it was 185,000 people died. Now, I like to look at numbers. I think it's very interesting. Not the book of Numbers, but different numbers. What does the Bible say about an angel killing people? Here's one passage where the angel of God, singular, killed 185,000 people. Anybody ever thought about the other time where there's angels threatening to kill the whole world? Yes, that's true. But something already happened in the past.
Exodus, Passover.
At the crucifixion, the Bible says there were 12 legions of angels. I just think it's interesting. If one angel can kill 185,000 people, how many can 12,000 angels kill? By the way, I've heard, according to people who study the population of the earth, that if you multiply 12,000 times 185,000, that's approximately the population of the earth at the time of Christ. If each angel killed 185,000 people. I just think that's very interesting. 2.2 billion. All right. Thank you. 2.2. Let me write that down. I will write it down. That's interesting. Okay, let's move on. We gotta roll along. We got a little ways to go still. Hezekiah's end. We see this in the end of chapter 32. He's sick and he's about to die, and so the prophet Isaiah tells him, "You are going to die. Set your house in order." And so Hezekiah cries out to the Lord in great agony, and God gives him 15 more years and even gave him a sign. The sundial returned 10 degrees as a sign. Oh, here we go again. The sun and the earth and their relationship. The sun, the sundial returned 10 degrees. All right, there's several options for how that can happen. John J. Davis, he claims he's dead now, but he is a writer about a lot of Old Testament stories and things. And he believed that it was a local thing, that God just miraculously moved the shadow on the degrees backwards. Other people believe that the entire earth and the solar system moved to where that shadow was moved. Okay? I have no idea. I know it was a miracle. Okay, it was a miracle either way. You know, I like to think that God, if he wanted to, he could just tell the sun, go backwards. There, that's good, right there. 10 degrees. If God wants to do that, and all the implications that has, and the flooding, and the oceans, and the planets colliding, and all that stuff, I think he can keep that under control as well. So, however, during this 15 years, his son Manasseh was born. Manasseh would be the next king. Manasseh is known as the worst king in Israel's history. He reigned the longest time. He did the most damage. He was 12 years old when he began to reign, and he was a horrible king. So that means he was born after Hezekiah had this miracle done for him, and after Hezekiah had 15 more years given to him. What did he do with those 15 years? Evidently not enough. Well, we see an example here. If you go back to 2 Kings chapter 20 now. 2 Kings chapter 20. I do want to look at this passage. In 2 Kings chapter 20, verse number 12, at that time, one of the kings of Babylon sent letters and a present unto Hezekiah, for he had heard that Hezekiah had been sick. Now, before you think, oh, Babylon, this huge country. No. This is little Babylon. This is unrecognized Babylon. This isn't a huge empire yet. The Assyrians are the huge empire. This is Babylon, small Babylon, trying to make some political connections with some other countries around there. And so when they come to Hezekiah, what does he do? he accepts their gift, and then verse 13, he hearkened unto them and showed them all the house of his precious things, the silver and the gold and the spices and the precious ointment, and all the house of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. Are you serious? He took them through his bank accounts. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion, that Hezekiah showed them not. This is 722, the northern kingdom fell to the Assyrians. So about 720, Hezekiah had the victory over the Assyrians. So roughly speaking, it's about 700 BC when the Babylonians show up here. Okay? The Babylonians don't take over the Assyrian Empire for quite a few more years. 700. In 705, I'm sorry, 605. Shoot. I knew something wasn't right there. In 605, the Babylonians do the first deportation against Jerusalem. So it's about 100 years later, about roughly, that the Babylonians come, that this prophecy is made. I didn't even read the prophecy yet. Verse 14. Then, after he showed them everything, Isaiah the prophet came unto the king Hezekiah, saying, What said these men, and from whence came they unto thee? Who are these people? And Hezekiah said, Oh, they're from this small country. Insignificant. They wanted to come and see our things, and I wanted to impress them. I wanted them to see what we had. You know what? There's some things in our lives, there's things in our, that are part of you and who you are in your life that are not for public consumption. They're not for people to see. They're sacred. They're sacred. Don't let people too close. You don't have to tell people all the details. Okay? There's things that are sacred, and there's things that are not for everybody to know. Okay, so Isaiah said, What said these men? Where are they from? And Hezekiah said, They are come from a far country. Hello, Gibeonites. Even from Babylon. Where's that? I mean, that used to be a powerful city many, many, many years before Babel. He said, What have they seen in thine house? And Hezekiah answered, All the things that are in mine house. There's nothing among my treasures that I have not showed them. Isaiah said, Hear the word of the Lord. Behold, the days come that all that is in thine house and that which thy fathers have laid up in store unto this day shall be carried unto Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord. And of thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. Who are eunuchs? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they weren't, I don't know if they were related directly, but there were other eunuchs as well. Daniel, of course, was probably a eunuch, but he also was actually, you know what? He very well might have. Daniel. No, sorry. Anyway. Then said Hezekiah to Isaiah, Good is the word of the Lord which thou hast spoken. And he said, Is it not good if peace and truth be in my days? Well, at least it's not going to happen to me. Sons of my bowels, sons of my children, at least it's not me. I get to live in peace. And he did live in peace. He died before it happened. Okay? That's the stupidity of Hezekiah. Real fool in that situation. All right, let's go through Manasseh, and then I'll let you go. I know everybody's a little sluggish today, so skiing will do that to you. The cold weather, what is it? What do you call that? When you're all revved up yesterday, you're excited. Huh? The adrenaline rush, and now today is a massive letdown. You're like, oh. So it's a big letdown. All right, Manasseh, 699 to 642. He reigned for 55 years. He's worse than the heathen. 2 Kings 21:9 tells us that. He built altars in the temple to Baal, Asherim, and the hosts of heaven. Let me read to you, or if you want to look at 2 Kings 21. Manasseh seduced them to do more evil than did the nations, whom the Lord destroyed. Wow. I was looking for the verse that talked about some of his gods that he built, but that's over in 2 Chronicles, evidently. He sacrificed children to Molech. He practiced witchcraft, divination, sorcery, and had spiritists. Very, very wicked king, 2 Chronicles 33. Eventually, he refused to pay his tribute, and the Assyrians took him captive and took him off to the land of Assyria. He repented, and the Assyrians allowed him to return. This is towards the end of his reign. They allowed him to return. When he came back, he destroyed idols in the altars. He rebuilt the outer wall, but the people didn't return to the Lord with him. And God, frankly, never wiped away the punishment for his sin. He had been too wicked. 2 Kings 23:26. Notwithstanding, the Lord turned not from the fierceness of his great wrath, wherewith his anger was kindled against Judah, because of all the provocations that Manasseh had provoked him withal. Okay, we're winding down towards the end. We are now at 642, and in 642, you've got about 35 years left till the first deportation. You've got from 642 to 586, so you've got a little over 50 years till Judah and Jerusalem will fall. Okay, so we're winding down real quickly now. The rest of the kings, other than Josiah, the rest of the kings are very much puppet kings under the rule of the Assyrians. All right, we are going to stop there for today.